All right, SEC football fans, you are watching a peek inside SEC football. Allie Peak, TJ Pittinger, and today a special treat. We have Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Chris, thanks for hanging out with us.
What's going on? Appreciate y'all having me. Really excited to chat. And as I was mentioning to you off air, we'll be back in Gainesville soon. So looking back to getting there, not just for baseball, basketball, but of course football season. Hopefully a bit of a redemption trip after last year, the Miami game, and watching what the Canes did to the Gators. But no, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate y'all having me. Y'all do great work, and excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, the SEC, lots of things happened this past season. Obviously, it was Texas and Oklahoma's first year in the conference. The SEC continues to kind of lead, really, in the college football landscape. I don't know if you saw that this is happening, but Nebraska has canceled their spring game. And Matt Rule is saying essentially he's afraid that there will be tampering of his players. They get out there, they see what they can do. There'll be scouts in the stands, essentially, and they could potentially steal his guys. Good move or bad move?
I mean, I think it's the right move as we move forward in this new era of college football. I think good or bad is subjective to the person. I mean, I'm somebody that, just like us all here, we grew up going to spring games. It was always something really cool. I'd go to the stadium with my grandfather, and it's a free event. You can bring families out, and you're able to get kind of your first look and glimpse at the new guys and get a look at the team, right? I just think now with the ever-changing landscape of college football, with NIL and the portal, I mean, I understand it. I'm kind of surprised. I think there's some things in college football I do kind of look like, and I'm surprised we still have them. Like, fan appreciation days went away. I remember the days of free autographs, right? Like, I can't even fathom that anymore, getting a
Florida
free
still
autograph from
does
a guy.
that. Florida still does
Good,
that.
good on them. Good for
Yeah.
them. It's funny. Most of these schools are using it as like the collectives are using it as a
Mhm.
fundraising opportunity, which
Sure.
good for them. But that's a new thing. I understand it from the spring game perspective. I mean, listen, I think about Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day. I mean, I'm talking about the elite programs, but this is everybody. I mean, what if you've got a guy that's a number 2 or a number 3 or this diamond in the rough kid that's been showing out all spring, and y'all know about him, but nobody else does. Why would you put him on display and his skill set on tape for other coaches to look at and say, well, that's a guy we want to target. We want to go pitch a deal to him. We want to come try to lure him away. It just makes your job that much tougher. So it's a shame because I think what we're seeing in college football as it continues to change, I say this a lot, the business has never been better. The game for the common fan it's never created more of a conflicting emotion, I think, within the common fan than it does today. Because I think for a lot of people, we'll always love college football,
Sure.
but the question I get is it less likable than it used to be? And I think at times you could say yes. So I will not be surprised at all when spring games go away. I don't think there's an if there. I think
Well,
when they go away, and if they don't, it'll be, I think, more so positioned to be used for like a fundraising type of thing, like
yeah.
we've seen with these fan appreciation days.
Well, you mentioned, the top programs. I almost think this isn't necessarily a fear of the top programs. It's more of a fear of the Nebraskas, of the
Yeah.
kind of middle of the road, because it's the top dogs that could potentially come in and pilfer, from their roster. But, I mentioned at the beginning the SEC leading, and I say that because Tom Osborne made a statement about this, and he's won 5 national championships at Nebraska. I believe 2 as an assistant, 3 as a head coach. Obviously, ruled the college football landscape 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess at this point. Oof, I feel old. But he suggested that conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten kind of get together and come up with some common sense rules that they put in place. That the NCAA doesn't have any teeth anymore, and that maybe it's time for these conferences to kind of put their foot down. Is there a way that you can limit the spring portal in a way that saves these spring games?
I mean, I think continuing to monitor the calendar. I think there's obviously a lot of complaints. I know we've already taken some action, or the college football, the commissioners, if you will, have taken some action. Thankfully, there are people in place that are a lot smarter than I that hopefully can come up with some solutions. But I think the biggest thing that everybody clamors for, and I would say the same for me, is just overall transparency and some sort of structure. I mean, we're making it up as we go along. There's no semblance of contracts or anything in writing. I mean, again, we all here are familiar with business. I operate as an independent business owner. I could just never fathom these handshake agreements and there not being any protection or any protocol in place. So, I mean, I think transparency and structure is the low-hanging fruit and a good place to start. But the problem is the toothpaste is out of the tube of sorts, and it's just going to be really, really tough to rein this thing in. But again, there is action we can take. But I think you make a great point, Allie, that the middle of the pack programs, they're worried to keep their talent because they don't want them getting taken. But I mean, again, I think about like a Kirby Smart and like, their 2s and 3s at Georgia could start at other places, and you're
Yeah.
just essentially putting on a showcase day. I mean, this applies to everybody. It's I didn't want to make it sound like just the top programs. It applies to everybody where you're just putting on a showcase day because you're featuring your young talent. And I mean, I just think when you logically think about it, it's kind of like, I mean, we love spring football, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, is it really worth doing that for what's all but a glorified scrimmage? Like, when you think about it that way, it's like not really. So what's
It,
the point? So
it's such
yeah.
a hard, I think, spring games, you talked about them being free and going as a kid. And I always think about the lifeblood of programs, the sustainability of programs starts with children, right?
Mm.
You boosters are not born 65-year-old men with money. They're 7-year-olds that caught a wristband at a spring game and fell in love and continued, on that dream their whole life. And there's some tipping point. I don't know where it is, but like we already, the game experience itself during the season is so expensive. We're pricing people out there. At some point, you hurt your bottom line way down the road when you cut out some of these things, the fan experiences, the spring games, and very long term, that concerns me.
I think what you're going to see more of, Allie, is like what Ole Miss did last year, where they had a dunk contest, a wing eating contest. I don't know if they exactly did that, but you get my drift. It was more of like a fan appreciation day.
Mhm.
I think if spring games go away from the standpoint of play on the field,
Mhm.
I think you'll probably see. I mean, Lane Kiffin, you could argue, is kind of out ahead of that. I'm sure they're not going to go back to playing a game this year because,
Mhm.
again, you protect your players. You're not putting anything on tape for anybody, and you're still getting fans to come out, embrace what was a successful spring. You get to see the guys. They're in their uniform, stuff like that. So, but it is, I mean, anytime there's change, it's met with resistance and it's uncomfortable. And, I mean, if that day comes where spring games become a thing of the past, that will be a strange day, no doubt.
You mentioned that we even think about like, they are trying to put some limitations on the portal windows, but we just saw, we'll go back to the Big Ten for a minute. I know this is SEC, but with Xavier Lucas, right? Oh, you don't want to go in the portal. Like you just unenroll and re-enroll in a new school. And so like, even if they put these portal windows in, what's stopping a kid from leaving after spring? What's stopping them from leaving, mid-season? Now enrollment matters and like when you can actually play matters. But I mean, there's nothing stopping a kid from leaving in November and playing in January somewhere, right? Now, I think that would probably be pretty frowned upon. And maybe we need something like that. Maybe we need something absolutely absurd because it happens like with this Wisconsin-Miami thing. And it's like, well, it was the offseason, it was the portal. We need it. We almost need a kid to do this, right? Like to just say, oh, I didn't make the playoff. Like, I'm out, bro. I'm going to play with UGA. I'm going to play with this team in the playoffs so that we can rein it back in. Because you're right. Like until there becomes some kind of guardrails on the whole thing, we can put in as many windows as we want or limit the windows to 10 days. And kids can just, and the NCAA has admitted that. And so back to Allie's original point about Tom Osborne, it almost feels like, will the NCAA listen to the SEC Big Ten? Like, will they do kind of what maybe the adults in the room want? Or will they just end up breaking away? Will the Power Four, and then the other 6 conferences, will they just end up saying, look, we're just going to come up with I know everybody like in media is like petitioning to be the next commissioner of college football, but will we just do something new in 5 years? Like, is the NCAA a thing for football in 5 years?
Well, I will tell you first things, TJ. I'm proudly not petitioning to be the commissioner. I'm good where I'm at, so I'll leave that to somebody else. But no, I mean I think to your point, you know what I'm a fan of. I'm pro sitting. I'm pro having to sit out a year. Maybe if you want to give the first transfer free, but I think I'm good with the sitting out a year. I think it's going to slow that down immensely because to your point, you shouldn't just be able to hop around. I know that we say with coaches, right, they get to move around freely. You know what people don't realize? Coaches have to pay a buyout to leave a lot of times. Most times they have
Millions
to
of
pay a
dollars.
buyout. There's some sort of like you have to do something in order to break this agreement to leave. It should be the same way for a player Maybe you don't have to pay a buyout, but you do have to sit out a season. I don't think there would be anything wrong with that necessarily. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, man, back to it, we do need leadership. We do need a commissioner in all seriousness. The NCAA has proved itself powerless at this point, time and time again. Now we got guys that are going to be playing until they're 25, 26 years old. I love Diego Pavia. Like, I'm glad he's back. But when you think about it big picture, the precedent it sets that, JUCO doesn't count anymore? I mean, that's crazy. And then you think beyond football, like, JUCO is huge in baseball. And we got guys that, I mean, they're literally going to be playing until they're 25 years old. College baseball. This is crazy. So we need leadership from somewhere. The NCAA, that I say governing body, it feels like it's giving them too much credit at this point. We got to find it somewhere else.
Well, and now we've got, D2 guys that are like, well, wait, D2 shouldn't count either. And those lawsuits have started, and Pandora's box is wide open.
I mean, the poor high school kids, I mean, it's roster spots are being taken up by guys that are their 7th or 8th year in college. I saw, who was the one guy, I think he played, I don't mean to single out this kid, but I think he played at Miami.
Yeah,
it was like
tight
his
end.
8th or 9th.
Yeah.
And he's like emotional after the game, and the comments are like, he's crying because he has to go into the workforce after 9 years. It's
just go to UPS, bro.
Something. You got to brush the LinkedIn off. Finally.
Very, very wild. Well, we talk about the NCAA having no teeth, and I am one of those that thinks that went away with COVID. We had the NCAA was such an iron fist for so long. I tell this story all the time, but when my husband played for Florida, they couldn't serve you cream cheese with your bagel because the carb to protein ratio wasn't in the right, window of numbers or whatever. Like we went from that to what we have now. And I think COVID is what did it, because the NCAA kind of looked at each conference and was like, I don't want to make the decision. You do you. You guys are good. And then we all realized, like, wait, maybe they really don't have a whole lot of power.